A businessman risking everything in his pursuit of success only realizes what he's lost when it's too late. Ethan Carter, the CEO of the rapidly growing fast food chain Burger Bite, had been so focused on profit that one crucial value had disappeared from the background: people. One decision, one discovery, one change. But now, how late was it to make amends for the mistakes he had made? Years later, will Mia take a step that shows just how far things have truly drifted? This is the story of chasing lost time and recovering the values that were left behind. Ethan Carter was 32 years old, young, ambitious, and capable of making smart decisions as a CEO. He had achieved great success by founding his dream fast food chain, Burger Bite. However, recently, complaints from his restaurants had been increasing, with growing concerns about the taste and service quality. Morale among the employees was low, there were frequent absences, and many were internally unhappy. For Ethan, this was a situation he would never accept. With success and growth came fame, and along with it, responsibilities. Every day was filled with the burden of running the company: meetings, analysis, reports, and media attention. Over time, Ethan had started losing that inspiring, entrepreneurial spirit. But it gave him an unforgettable lesson. A leader cannot succeed by just making decisions from behind an office desk. The most important thing was customer experience and employee satisfaction. To fix this, he started looking for a solution, and as a last resort, he considered becoming a secret shopper. He wanted to visit one of his chain's branches, keeping his identity hidden, and see the reality with his own eyes. He made a decision: that branch would be just the beginning. If he learned the truth, he could make bigger changes for the company. He decided to camouflage himself with a gray hat, glasses, and an old jacket. His clothes weren't just a physical disguise, but also a psychological barrier. No one would recognize him now. This was going to be one of Ethan's toughest journeys. To learn the truth, he had to first act as just another customer, unnoticed by anyone. When he entered through the neon-lit door of the branch, he was greeted by the sharp smell of oil and the familiar sound of sizzling French fries. Everything around him seemed the same as always. Burger Bite's colorful posters were on the walls: taste, speed, quality. These slogans had always represented the restaurant's vision and brand. But now, those slogans seemed like masks, and it was unclear how much of them they were truly living up to. Inside, he felt more emptiness than ever before. Instead of thinking about past successes, he was focused on the present state of this place, this brand. The smell of hot oil, the steam drifting under the ceiling, and the atmosphere that once excited him now felt strangely foreign. The young cashier at the counter was focused on their phone, their fingers moving quickly over the screen, occasionally looking up and glancing around. Ethan gave a slight smile, but the cashier's eyes were glued to their phone. Whether they would recognize him or not didn't matter much. Since he was there as a secret shopper, he didn't want to disturb anyone. But slowly and gently, he tried a few times, saying, "Hello?" The cashier didn't respond the first 2 times, eyes still on the phone. On the 3rd try, the cashier finally looked up at Ethan, offering a weak smile and starting to take his order. As Ethan placed his order, he overheard a conversation between 2 kids behind him. Their voices stood out against the restaurant's noise. One's voice was almost sharply anxious, while the other spoke more calmly, with an underlying sense of worry. "Look, I'm coming here for the last time," one of them said, their voice firm but also carrying a hint of indifference. Ethan glanced at them from the corner of his eye without turning his head. 2 high school students, around 15 or 16, sat next to each other with backpacks. One's eyes showed a rebellious spirit typical of youth, while the other seemed more nervous. "Last week there was a hair in my burger and my mom almost sued the company," the other said, laughing. For the kids, suing a company over something like that seemed like a trivial matter. Ethan's face tightened. At that moment, he realized that these complaints weren't just rumors, they were too real to be ignored. There were indeed problems. Burger Bite's image had been built for years on customer satisfaction and quality service. But now he had to face the fact that those slogans were nothing but masks. A teenager seriously considering suing a company over a hair in their burger was a clear sign of just how much things were heading towards a big collapse. This wasn't just customer dissatisfaction. It was a crisis involving the brand's reliability and values. The kids continued talking, but suddenly there was a pause. Ethan was about to take out his phone to take notes when one of the kids, lowering their voice a bit, continued. "Well, the burger doesn't taste bad or anything, but," they said, hesitating for a moment. Ethan immediately tuned in. The complaints were now not just about taste. This was a sign of a deeper issue. But what, he thought. This was a question that went beyond just looking at the surface of the problem. There was a brief silence before the other kid replied, But, well. Afterward we always got sick, nausea and stuff. My mom says we need to make sure everything's fresh, and she says we have to be careful next time we come. Ethan's expression changed. This wasn't just a regular complaint. It could be a serious health issue. As he delved deeper into the kids' conversation, he realized that Burger Bite was facing more than just a bad image. In that moment he understood that he had to see his company for what it truly was, not the way he wished it to be. And it wasn't going to be an easy journey. He put his phone back in his pocket and stepped back. The kids were still talking, but now the only thing echoing in Ethan's mind was the sense of lost trust with every meal and every order concerning customer satisfaction. This was more than just a problem he had to solve as a manager. It was about the identity of the entire brand. As Ethan listened to the kids' conversation, he suddenly heard another name. "You know, the real problem is the CEO," one of them said with a tone at the end of the sentence as if they were blaming Ethan. This made Ethan pay even more attention. He needed to understand exactly what they thought. "I'm thinking about Mia," the kid continued, their voice mixed with a bitter sigh. "Mia? Who's that?" the other kid asked casually, but a question mark appeared in Ethan's mind. Who was Mia? He was hearing this name for the first time. However, the way they mentioned her name revealed the emotional depth behind their words. "She's the boss's sister. She used to bring us food at school," the kid said, their eyes distant. "They said she had leukemia, she couldn't come anymore." Ethan's heart ached. Leukemia. That word had always carried a heavy meaning. Facing a disease that made it impossible to get life back, the fight for health and survival, it left deep scars on everyone's soul. Ethan quickly pushed these thoughts aside as the flow of the conversation was becoming even more interesting. Burger Bite was her idea, but her brother messed everything up, the other said with deep disappointment. At that moment something clicked. He realized Mia had played an important role in laying the foundations of this brand. But everything going wrong was because of the decisions made by the person in charge, the CEO Ethan himself. The changes and chaos within the company had somehow turned into a family drama. As Ethan listened to this small dialogue, he felt that everything he had thought about his past and his brand was being turned upside down. Mia, who had contributed so much while fighting her illness, had been so easily forgotten. While her brother, the CEO, made all the decisions, it was hard to understand where the real power and inspiration had gone. For a moment Ethan took a deep breath. These seemingly ordinary conversations were making him question what he, as a leader, had overlooked or what values he had been defending. The kids' words about Mia being the true founder of the company showed that the brand had a past it should have been grateful for. However, in the hands of her brother, everything had quickly veered off course. These conversations were more than just what he'd heard as a customer. Ethan realized he didn't fully understand how things had gone wrong or how they should be fixed. Mia's story showed him how critical his decision to start over was. He had started to slowly wrap his mind around the coldness within the company. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. Mia. Hearing that name from strangers felt like reopening a wound he had long forgotten. His heart started to race, each beat bringing a deep sense of discomfort. Mia, years ago when she was volunteering at the hospital, had started one of Burger Bite's most valuable projects, the Free Burgers for Needy Students program. This wasn't just about the company's social responsibility, it was a reflection of the company's conscience. Ethan had initially embraced the idea with excitement. But as the company grew, he gradually pushed this project aside, even forgetting about it in his mind. He had wanted to grow so badly that he had left behind these small but deeply meaningful values. But now those kids seemed to care more about Mia's illness and even her life than he had. Accepting this truth was extremely difficult for Ethan. As the company rose rapidly, he realized how big a loss he had actually experienced, and it felt like a weight on his heart. Mia had laid the foundation for the company, but he, her brother, had failed to recognize the real issue, the disease she was battling and everything that needed to be addressed. In that moment, what those kids said made him realize that Mia was not just a patient but much more. Mia's struggle was not just about a business idea, but about humanity and values. Ethan realized that abandoning this project and these values had led him to understand how the company's heart had begun to wither. The moment he heard Mia's name, he felt how much he had become alienated from the idea that the business needed to be much more than just a profit machine. When Mia was ill and Ethan had forgotten to reach out and support her life, he understood that the company had begun to lose its true identity as well. He had been so focused on success that he had ignored the real people, real issues, and real connections. The company's growth had promised him so much, but he had overlooked those small projects, Mia's ideas, and the responsibility to the community. Now those kids were talking about Mia's illness, showing concern for her, and sharing that worry. Suddenly, Ethan was overwhelmed by a deep sense of guilt. As his heart raced, he felt the pain and loss in what the kids had said, even more profoundly. Mia, in his eyes, was no longer just a family member, but also a tangible representation of the values he had lost. The company's journey toward growth had actually distanced him from his own humanity. These thoughts were swirling in Ethan's mind like a puzzle that needed to be solved. Ethan suddenly felt as if he had lost himself. He was so deep in thought that, without realizing it, he turned to the kids and spoke up. "Excuse me." His voice came out a bit harsh, but immediately after, he recognized the emotion behind his words. Who he was right now, his identity, or his position as the CEO didn't matter. All that mattered were the questions inside him, the echoes in his conscience, and the desire to make up for lost time. "How did you meet Mia?" he asked with a sense of hope. The two kids looked at him in surprise for a moment, and Ethan could see a meaning in their eyes. From their expressions, he sensed how important Mia was to them, despite being so young and unfamiliar. Then there was a long silence, as if each of them was searching for the right words. Finally, one of them looked up and took a step toward Ethan. "In the chemotherapy room at the hospital. We met while she was bringing us food," the kid said, their voice slightly trembling but carrying deep meaning. "I saw her drawing the Burger Bite logo." They pulled a crumpled piece of paper from their pocket, the corners slightly yellowed. Quickly they unfolded it and handed it to Ethan. When Ethan looked at the paper, his heart momentarily stopped. The logo was a design he knew all too well. 2 years ago, in the early stages of the company, Mia had drawn that cute, smiling tomato character. This was the company's original design. Mia's first spark of creativity, that pure excitement and passion, symbolized the meaning behind the brand in its early years. Ethan squinted his eyes for a moment as he looked at the drawing. Mia's creation, that cheerful tomato figure, now felt like a lost part of everything. His eyes welled up. In that moment, he thought about the project Mia had worked on during those difficult days in the hospital. The first time he met her. Her smiling figure, which was more than just a part of the company, symbolized his connection to the values he had lost. The pure, sincere passions of the company's early days had been overshadowed by the drive for growth and success. That tomato figure wasn't just a drawing. It was a symbol that carried meaning. So much time had passed that he could hardly remember anything about the drawing and the initial project. Mia's design, created with such simplicity and sincerity, once showed how pure and human-centered the company's heart had been. As Ethan held the drawing in his hands, he realized everything that had been lost and all the values that needed to be regained. Mia's illness had brought these truths, which he had ignored for years, to the forefront. Tears streamed down his face as he silently continued to look at the paper in the kid's hands. Mia had been one of the purest parts of the company, and with each passing day, he had pushed her further away. At that moment, the waiter at the counter suddenly shouted, cutting through Ethan's emotional turmoil, "Your order is ready, Mr. Carter." The kids' eyes went wide in shock, their faces reflecting disbelief and horror. "Why you?" they mumbled, unable to pronounce the words properly due to their surprise. Ethan could feel their shock, but something inside him was shifting. Everything had suddenly become real, but now he felt ready to accept that truth with all his courage. He took off his hat and lowered his glasses. His eyes opened not just to those two kids, but to everything he had lost in the past. "Yes," he said, his voice firm and resolute. "And I'm going to Mia. Now." Without wasting any time, he rushed out the door. The sound of his footsteps left the last echo in the gloomy restaurant. He quickly opened the door, stepped outside, and took a deep breath. At that moment, everything was starting to take shape, both in his inner journey and in the world outside. He couldn't afford to lose a single moment to make things right. Pulling out his phone, he quickly yelled to his assistant. There was a sense of urgency in his voice he had never felt before. "Gather all the franchise owners," he said, his words like orders, "and find me the address of the nearest hospital." Each word was a sign of a decision. Mia had long been a lost memory in his mind. Now he had to get that lost time back. He had to go back no matter what and find her. He understood that the future of the company wasn't just about profit and growth. It also had to be about bringing these values together to serve humanity. This journey was the return of everything. His assistant, sensing the urgency in Ethan's voice, quickly responded. "Understood, Mr. Carter. I'll start right away." Ethan's eyes sparkled in the darkness, the passing streetlights flashing by. It wasn't too late to take a step forward, to change something. He was determined to risk everything to find Mia and reclaim both her and the company's lost soul. When Ethan stepped into the hospital, time seemed to momentarily stop. The fragile walls, the cold white lights, and the sterile hospital scent were familiar to him, but there was a pain in this environment that he had never been accustomed to. He had moved so quickly that he hadn't fully grasped what he had lost until he reached Mia's room. But now, as he opened the door and stepped inside, he saw her. Mia, despite her pale face, was somehow smiling. Her face showed clear signs of exhaustion and illness, but that smile echoed sharply in Ethan's heart. It reminded him of how pure and genuine that smile had once been. "So you finally managed to get out of work," Mia said with a teasing tone, though underneath it there was both love and a hint of reproach. In that moment, Ethan realized just how much had been left behind. Mia wasn't just his sister, she was a crucial part of the company's heart, and yet he had been so distant from her. Ethan instinctively took a step forward and knelt by her bed. His eyes were filled with tears, but he couldn't speak a single word. "You were right," he whispered, his voice hoarse and broken. "I only thought about the profit, not the people." That sentence struck him with a truth he had forgotten for so many years. No matter how much he had chased success, how many dreams of growth and expansion he had envisioned, he had moved farther and farther away from what truly mattered. Mia was the essence of everything, and he had distanced himself from that essence, focusing solely on numbers and growth. In forgetting the people, he had lost the most important element of the business. Mia was reminding him of what life truly was, but how late had he been to learn that? Mia's eyes slowly lit up. She saw her brother's regret and the deep internal struggle within him. And at that moment she didn't just want him to make up for the lost time. She wanted him to rediscover the value of people in life, to reclaim his heart and soul. "You can still change, brother," Mia said, smiling softly, but with a deeper meaning this time. "There's still a way forward for everything." That night, a video was posted on Burger Bite's social media account. At the beginning of the video, Ethan's face appeared. His eyes seemed to carry all the weight and guilt he had been holding onto. The camera slowly moved to reveal Mia, sitting on a hospital bed, weak but determined. Ethan held the crumpled logo sketch, the old drawing of the tomato figure with Mia's creative touch, proudly showing it. Ethan took a deep breath, looked into the camera, and began to speak. "From today onwards, we will donate 10% of our profits to children's hospitals," he said, his voice resolute but carrying an emotional echo. This sentence was a clear sign that everything was about to change, that the brand was accepting a responsibility not just for profit, but for humanity as well. Ethan paused for a moment, then fixed his gaze back on the camera as he continued. "And I'm making Mia the vice CEO." These words marked a turning point. In that moment, Ethan's decisions were no longer just about profit and growth. They were signaling the start of a profound transformation that would reshape the heartbeat of the company. Mia, accepting this offer, had a look of surprise, but also trust in her eyes. She knew that Ethan's words now reflected a shift toward not just chasing profit but contributing value to society and people. The future of the company would take shape through the revival of the old dreams they once built together. And she, as one of the leaders of this change, would be part of it. At the end of the video, Ethan and Mia smiled at each other. Both of them could see a path ahead where they could start anew, rather than dwelling on the lost time. Ethan had finally accepted his true strength and responsibility as a leader, and Mia, by taking on an important role for both her brother and the future of the company, was opening the door to a new era. The next day, all the employees of the Burger Bite branch gathered together. Ethan and Mia organized a training session early in the morning to share the company's new vision with everyone. Instead of merely chasing profit, they explained that the brand now had to value people, and that each customer was not just a consumer but a human being. The company's core values had changed. Speed, quality, and taste were now tools, and the true purpose was to provide value to people and support projects that benefited society. During the training, Mia explained how they would rediscover the lost values and meet people's needs more effectively. Ethan made sure to gather feedback from the employees, involving them in the process. He wanted to create an atmosphere where everyone's ideas were valued. This change was going to shape the brand, not only through the desire for growth but through the respect it had for people. And then, those two high school students, still shocked but excited, became the first members of the Youth Advisory Board. Ethan had realized how important their complaints and observations were. Listening to the voice of young people was not just about hearing them, but also learning from them, a crucial step in making the company better. Mia expressed her belief in them, saying their innovative ideas would bring great value to Burger Bite. In that moment, the future of the company was no longer just in the hands of top executives, but in the voices of every employee and every young person. Over time, these steps didn't just become changes, they evolved into a revolution. Burger Bite went beyond being a traditional fast food chain. It became a community brand. Working together as the CEO and vice CEO, Mia and Ethan developed projects that focused not only on profit but also on the welfare of society. The Youth Advisory Board grew stronger every year with new members, and their suggestions echoed throughout every aspect of the company. In the end, Burger Bite became more than just a restaurant chain, it became a brand that touched the heart of the community. The smiling tomato character that Mia had drawn was no longer just a logo, it was a symbol reminding people of their worth. Years later, when Ethan looked back, he realized that the dark period had taught him the most valuable lessons. Sometimes being lost can show you the way to be found again. And it all began with the power of a change made from the heart. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Turn on notifications so you won't miss any of our new videos. You can support us by clicking the like button, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video. Goodbye.